Okay, so one of the first things you're going to want to do to try this at home is you're going to need to download a tool that will allow you to run Apache, MySQL, and PHP. Probably the most common one is called XAMPP. It's very easy to download and install. It installs on your hard drive. There's a control panel. Now I've already got Apache and MySQL running, so I don't really need to do anything. I can stop it if I want, but it doesn't matter. Now in the XAMPP directory, you're going to have a directory called htdocs. Then under there, you can have a subdirectory for every site you want. And the one that I built is called Friends. All right. And just to kind of remind you all how that works, is I'm just going to go to localhost friends. Okay, so now the first thing it brings up would be the index.php, unless you give it something else. So if we go into the directory and I go down here and I look for index.php, we're going to see that this is the first one we get. There's not a heck of a lot to this one. Is there? Oops, sorry, you know what? I think I clicked the wrong one. Okay, so there's not a lot to this. You're going to see some JavaScript. There's one there for validate year, which will validate the year on it. Validate day, which is going to validate what the day, and then the form submission, which checks to make sure that the date is valid. If we look on here, what we'll see is that the year. Okay, so that was that thing that validates year, and then the month is a drop down, so we don't have to worry about it. And then the day you type in. So January 31. And if I did something like that, it would say that's an invalid day, so we have to put a valid date on it. So first we'll go over creating an account again, and I'm going to use I've already done Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck and Fred Flintstone, I think. So who's going to be next? How about and of course I've got to use an email address that I haven't used yet. Could use that one. Of course, now this is SQL, which we went over some time back. This user table is where the stuff gets saved. Okay, so we got Mickey Mouse, myself, Donald Duck, Fred Flintstone. The email addresses are all my Timlin R ones are there. So let's try a different email. Let's try Bob Timlin at bobtimlin.com at gmail.com. Okay, so we'll go with that. I can create the profile. Here I did get an error message, undefined variable birth date. I think that was something I needed to fix. So it submits to add user. So let's take a look at that one, especially since we're getting an error on it. And I'll show you how this works in a moment. So it's saying it's not finding birth date, and that's probably because I've got a misspelling between this page and the PHP. Okay, we do have a problem. There is no birth date because what we're sending in, I think originally I was typing the birth date, but now we're actually sending in something else. So I probably need to say dollar birth date to dollar year dollar month. We'll see if this works. Actually, we could just do this. It's going to create a date that looks like, in this case, it's going to be 1999-01-31. That's what it should create based on what I entered. Okay, so it did add it, but the date of birth is over. We'll come back to that. Okay, but let's look at this. Other than that one error, because that is, let's look what's happening here. So the first thing I'm doing is I'm saying include database.php, and we showed you how to do raw database stuff in PHP last week. But what I've got, this database.php is really my own class that I wrote, and we'll take a look at it, that streamlines the whole process of database stuff, because there's a lot to database. So this is a class I wrote that just streamlines it and makes it easier. And it's going to have the connection information and things like that. This is going to create a database. We're saying if $last name exists. And here's an insert statement. Values are a bunch of question marks. And the question marks are placeholders for the values that we put in eventually. And those placeholders, we create the data. This creates the database connection. This prepares that statement or pre-populates this statement in MySQL. So basically it's pre-compiled in MySQL so we know whether it's valid or not. And then each one of these set strings essentially replaces a question mark with a value. So the first one is last name, then first name, email, password, birth date, and gender. Now, the next thing we should do after this, really, is we should give people the option to, let's say, H2, I think it's home.php. Which I didn't do last time we should. This try-catch block, I'm not sure if we talked about try-catch blocks in JavaScript, but it is basically, it's something we use when we're working with something we call a volatile resource. A volatile resource is essentially something that is outside of our own control that that we think something could possibly go wrong because it's outside our control. And this allows us to trap those errors in a very local blocked area and deal with it. And that's what try-catch does. Normally it doesn't happen, but sometimes it can. So this will execute that SQL statement, which will essentially insert into this table all the information I just entered on the form. And we can see it's there. Now I'm going to have to log in. Okay, there I am. Not a lot of information. No image. So we need to get an image. And let's just say Bart Simpson. Sure, we can find an image of Bart Simpson somewhere. Let's take this one. I found. And we'll save image as. Sure, right here. let's call it Bart. Okay, now go there and can look for its image. There it is. Send, and now the image is there. Okay, so let's not get too far ahead. We looked at, this is the one that adds the page, right? Insert statement, it just inserts the data. The next one we went to after that, when we logged in, is we went into home. And this has got quite a bit more information. Actually, most of what's going on is going on in home.php. And we'll look at that for a moment. What this thing here says, if email and password, then it goes and it selects all the information based on the email and password. So if you pass in a user an email and a password, it will pull your profile from users.254 based on the email and password. If they don't match, then there'll be a problem. And then we're going to get, again, connect to the database, set the connection, prepare the SQL statement, set values for email. The first one will be email, which is right here, this question mark. The next one is for the password. We execute the command, and we get the row of data. Now, the next thing I'm doing is I'm putting all this information into my session. $_session is a global array that PHP sets up for you to allow you to store information so that the browser remembers it the next time you come back. So in each one of those cases, I'm storing the email, the password, the user ID, first name, last name, gender, and birthday. Now the next thing I'm doing is I'm setting a last login date equal to sysdate. Now if we look at Bart Simpson, and we look at all the way at the end, we're going to see last login is null. But now that I've logged in, it should have a value. And there it is. It shows 2012, the 11th day, 1822, which is about what it is now, the time. Okay, so that did that right there. And then now we're printing, hello, welcome back, and all that. And the rest of this is mostly straight HTML. It's getting some data from the session to print out information. Now, the user ID is generally hidden. The user ID is used as part of the image. So when we upload that picture, user underscore plus the user ID is tagged onto a .jpg. Then we've got a table for the last name, first name, all coming out of the session variables. We'll look at some of these other things in a moment, but if we look at this form right here, and this isn't the best example because there's no data in here, but if I were to log out and log in as here, I probably would have some more data. Okay, so you see that I have Bob Timlin and there's no requests. We're going to go through all of this. Let's go to the first one here, My Friends, which says to include my friends. Okay, so we go out here and we look for My Friends. There it is. This is another very simple PHP, which is going to select from the view My Friends for your user ID. So this will pull, and I don't know what the user ID is, but if we were to just say, select all the My Friends from here, this is what we would get. And we execute it, and then we're using a while loop to produce a table. We're embedding in that table a JavaScript command that says viewFriend. That's going to pass in the ID. Then it's going to print out the name, and there's a JavaScript that says delete friend. Okay, all of this will be executed, and it will be literally included right in this spot right here. So if we go back and we look at this, and what we see is that we've got Tinlin B. If I click on this, it would go to view friend. If I clicked on the X, it would call that JavaScript delete friend. So clicking on it brings some information, and I'll go over each one of these in a moment. Any questions so far? I know we're going through a lot. I am taping it, so you'll be able to review it again. Okay, so that's essentially what's involved in displaying it. Next thing we kind of want to do is we want to look at some of the JavaScript. You've gone through JavaScript, but there's some new stuff here. We haven't talked about Web 2.0 and Ajax yet. I don't think we've talked about that yet, and we probably should. There's some examples of it here, so that when I click on something, for example, it opens up a little pop-up screen and it brings me information down. It's not the best resolution. That color contrast isn't that great. I probably should change it. Make it a little easier. But what happens when we click on View Friend? Okay, this is the method or function it goes to, passes in the ID. We call something called Web Service. We'll talk about that in a moment. And it calls which just passes in a PHP page, get friend data, view friend callback, which is this function here. So the way that Ajax works is a little different than regular pages, is it does a behind-the-scenes call to the web server, and it gets the results back behind the scenes as well, meaning the page doesn't fully submit anywhere. The information is sent in the background to a server, and a response is received in the background, so that you don't have to refresh the page. It's a lot faster than traditional page refreshes. But the way this works is it works under something called asynchronous, which means you send a request and you don't wait for a response. You just give it a function to call, the callback or the response. And that's what that is here. Once we get the information, and we'll look at it in a moment, what we're going to do is we're going to get it, and we'll see it the way it works. Let's look at get friend data. Okay. Not much going on here. All we're doing is we're querying this information from the database for a particular ID, and then we only expect one row. We're going to print this out: $email pipe, $first name pipe, $last name pipe, $gender pipe, $birthday. And we can look at how this would work if I just give it an ID. So if I just go in here and I do this, and I say get friend data, and that didn't get very much. Let's look for one that's really here. Okay, so let's try 3 is gone. So let's try 4. So here we have Bob at Tinlin.net, Bob, Tinlin Mail, and it's a pipe delimited list. All right, so essentially, this pipe delimited list is coming back to this function. If I were to uncomment that, you'd see it. And then you see, you've learned the split method of the class, right? That we can split it on a delimiter. So I'm saying split it on a pipe. That creates an array based on where the 0 element is the email, first is the first name, 2 is the last name, and 3 is the gender, and the 4th would be the date of birth, but we don't actually have that. and it's storing it into the various fields for email, first name, last name, gender, and birthday. So we'll refresh that. So when I click on this, we get this little thing here, a whole pipe list, and then we see all that data winds up here. This is a very small amount of data that's sent back. If we did it the traditional way, which would be a full page refresh, you'd get all of this back. It's a lot of information, get it all back. But the only thing we needed to refresh was this little area here. And we only needed these five pieces of information to do the refresh. So why refresh the whole page? Ajax and Web 2.0 allows you to do what they call a behind-the-scenes web call, which basically means that the page doesn't refresh. It makes a call while you're doing other things on the page, and it gets a response while you're doing other things on the page. And then it updates the page. It's actually very fast. It's considerably faster than the traditional full-page refresh. It allows you to do quick behind-the-scenes lookups. To give you another example here, and we'll look at this one in a moment too, we go to click Find More Friends, and I start to type, so there's nothing there, Donald Duck. You see how it does that immediately. Okay, that's the full, that's doing a pretty, we don't have a lot of people in here, but if we were to look at that one, which is Finder, I think. Yeah, Finder. We're going to see that here is the field in which we're typing, and I have an on key up equals Finder this. Okay, so that's an on. So as the key goes up, it's going to call Finder this, which is right there. It checks to make sure there's some content in there. It calls Get Content, which again is doing a behind-the-scene web call. And when the data comes back, okay, it's going to. This is showing you how it works in raw JavaScript, how the web call works. It's going to call state change 3, which looks and says if the ready state is 4 and the status is 200, that means it's done. It again converts it to an array, and it then creates a table as a string using a for loop to loop through the array and print out all the information it found. Right? This is array. This is column 0, 1, 2, and 3, and then it updates that area with the information. So what we get when we do that, when we start typing, is that we get M, it's Mickey Mouse, T, D, S, right? There's only one person of each name in this, so there's not a lot to show, but it updates it very quickly. And again, it's not doing a full page refresh. So if I click on this, add as friend, should show in there as a friend. Oh, these are people that requested you. So okay. So now I can go in and take this thing, and let's try it from here. So we'll log in as Dark Simpson. And I will see that I have that Fred Flintstone requested to be my friend. We'll also see some email on this, so let me see if I Probably got some email. By the way, I would have received email. Okay, I don't see any of my emails. I should have gotten an email. Or Fred Flintstone would have gotten an email, actually. Not me. And Fred Flintstone, what was the login for Fred Flintstone? Yeah, let's try my Yahoo account. There we go. Oh, no, that's not it. Oh, okay, the email didn't work. Okay. I'll tell you why the email didn't work. The email didn't work because I don't have an email server on this computer. That's why it didn't work. That's why it didn't work. But normally I would get an email.